Welcome to Market Pulse Pros and Pioneers. Each week, I talk with industry leaders on both marketing and entrepreneurship and business to find out all about their wins and failures in marketing right now. We'll hear all about successes and wins and what's fallen flat so that you can take that knowledge and implement it. Learn from the best, from the folks who've been there and done it all, as well as people just like you. Thanks for joining us. This is Market Pulse Pros and Pioneers.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Market Pulse Pros and Pioneers. Today we are bringing you a little bit of magic. I'm going to explain what I mean by that in just a moment, but today's guest is the fabulous Jimi Gibson. Jimi, welcome along to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Looking forward to our chat.
Amazing. Jimi is the VP of Brand Communication at Thrive Agency. He's also a TEDx speaker and a Forbes Agency Council member with over 25 years of experience in marketing and messaging. But before mastering brand communication, Jimi was a professional magician, an experience that taught him to captivate audiences, create intrigue, and deliver unforgettable messages. He's since applied those skills to the business world, helping brands cut through the noise with the Magic Script, a brain-based framework for crafting messaging that connects emotionally and converts. And his mission is to make sure businesses stop relying on marketing fluff and instead master the art of clear, compelling messaging that actually works. I have to say, Jimi, I have so many questions, but I love that your focus is on that emotional connection with messaging, because I think that's super important. And hands on heart, it's usually the bit that all of the people who are struggling with their business are missing, because there's just no connection between them and their audience. So I'm going to come back to that in a moment, but first of all, I want to rewind, because you've got 25 years of experience in marketing and messaging, and I'm assuming that the magician stage of your life was before that, right? Or was it kind of running in parallel?
Yeah, well, I started when I was about 4. I found a little membership card in a box a few years ago that I was part of the mail order Merlin's Magic Club. And I couldn't believe the date on that card. And, things progressed. I was very interested in marketing and advertising, and we can dig into that. But it's always been a parallel path. I have been able to incorporate it in talks that I give. Clients know this is what I do. So yeah, it's just one of those things that it just is sort of the lens that I see the world through.
It's fascinating. So it's something that you kind of, I guess you found an early interest in it for. It's not often we'll come across people who maintain an interest from when they were 4-year-old through into later life. So I think of that as a call-in rather than something that you kind of were interested in. What would you say is the most interesting experience you had in that kind of magician's experience?
Wow, to nail that down to one would be tough. I got a magic kit formally when I was 6 years old, and I was sort of the only kid in the neighborhood that had a business card, and I was advertising myself to perform birthday parties for kids my age, wow, which was kind of cool. I'll tell you what was an interesting turning point for me. My mom and dad were very supportive. They put up with this little kid who was a little on the strange side. My younger brother is a lawyer. My older brother is an electrical engineer. So I'm sort of this weird kid in the middle. But my mom had taken me to open up a savings account at the local bank. And I said, sure, anything that involves money and hanging out with my mom sounds pretty good to me. So we went to the bank. The teller asked us to sit down at this table. And she said, I need you to hold your thumb up. And she wanted me to press my thumb into this ink pad. Well, as I started to gather the scene, I saw these posters around the bank, and it was a promotion called the Thumb Body campaign. And it was to encourage kids to open up a savings account. And as I pressed my thumb into that ink pad, she opened up this passbook and asked me to press my thumb into that passbook and told me that was how I was going to be identified when I came in to make a deposit. And so, we had chores around the house. I was making money as doing these magic shows. And so my mom thought it would be best to teach me good savings practices. And so after I pressed my thumb in there, she said, I need you to draw a character using the thumb as sort of the body of this character. And she pointed to a poster, and there were pictures of little cartoon thumb people. There was a doctor, a lawyer, a ballerina, a fireman, all these different types of characters. And I looked and I was like, I don't see the one that I think I need to draw. I took the pen and I went down to the little drawing and I added a little top hat and drew a hand with a magic wand. And I kind of caught myself right in the middle and I thought, should I be doing this? I mean, doctors and lawyers and all of that. And so the lady who was sitting with us, the teller, she said, wow, that's amazing. That's a great drawing. And I was like, okay. And so then I looked at my mom and my mom was like, good job. And I was like, it gave me validation that, hey, I could be anything that I wanted to be. And so that was sort of a turning point for me, that it gave me permission to be this magician. And through high school, I started working at an ad agency. That's what they were called back then, not digital marketing agency. And I was doing promotional shows for one of their clients. And I was doing upwards of 50 shows a year in high school. And I thought, wow, this is pretty cool. And that's what connected the magic to the marketing, that it's behavior change, it's getting people excited, it's a sense of wonder. And so these products that I was promoting gave a different dimension to that campaign. And that's what I've always tried to maintain. You know, we talked earlier, you were mentioning about the emotional connection. You know, when you think about somebody seeing a magic trick, there's this sense of wonder and awe and possibility and how could this happen? And if you can take just a little bit of that and move it over to a product or service, I think that's what people are looking for. They're looking to be amazed by a company. You know, customer service, we all have had horrible experiences with customer service. We've ordered a product that doesn't meet the expectations of what we thought it should. And if we just look at how are we designing our product and services to present that feeling of awe, wonder, and connection, that's the world I want to live in. So I don't know if that exactly answers your question, but that's kind of how I see it.
Love it. There is, I could probably, we've only got half an hour for the episode, otherwise I'd probably be asking loads and loads more detailed questions. I guess, what was, in your mind, what was the thing that most attracted you to being a magician at that early stage, before you kind of thought about careers and money? And was it the performance? Was it the excitement? Was it kind of being in front of a crowd? I don't know, what was it, a mixture?
Yeah, I would say it would be channeling class clown behavior into a useful thing. I've always been sort of outgoing. You know, they say public speaking is feared more than death. I don't have a problem standing up in front of a crowd. My parents would have, I don't know what they call them over there, but we call them yard sales or garage sales, where you take a bunch of stuff and put it out and people come by and purchase it. When they had one of those, I would sell tickets for 25 cents, and then I would move the crowd over to a different part of the backyard and perform the show. And so I think it's everything, the routine, maybe having a secret that nobody else knows about, look on people's faces. I would say it's all packaged up together. You know, I love knowing how things work. There's a lot of things that happen to the audience that are not seen by the spectators. So they call that the backstage view. And then I love sort of the idea of defying the natural laws of science, right? You know, I'm sorry to let your audience in, but magic is not real. There is a trick behind it, but there's a suspension of disbelief that happens when the audience says, hey, I'm going to go to this magic show. They want to be fooled. They want to have that happen. And so I think outside of commerce and all of those things, and we can connect the dots, I just love having the ability to walk into any room, any place, and just be able to give people fun. You know, I volunteer at various charities around town, whether they're doing a fundraiser, whether it's, I mean, we have a homeless ministry downtown, and I will go and do a magic trick before the food is served and the blessing is said. And I'm just doing magic tricks for the homeless. And you think, why would you want to do that? Well, you know what? Everybody needs to forget about their day for a minute. They need to have some sense of wonder or joy. Yeah, I think that's probably the attraction that has stuck with me, is just that feeling that people get when they can't figure it out and they're just like, oh man, that was awesome. I can't believe it. So, yeah.
So then moving that forward, at some point in your career, you decided to then get into the kind of public speaking side of things. You mentioned that you didn't really have a fear of it as such, but what was the turning point where you decided you would go and do a TEDx talk, for example?
Yeah, I think, you know, if you're familiar with TED, it's the idea, you know, what is the idea you have that's worth spreading? And so, again, wrapped in the prestige of being on the TED stage, but then there's a responsibility for it not to be about you. It's about something that somebody needs to hear. And so my wife and I had the chance to visit Rwanda we were sponsoring a young man over there, just a nominal amount that took care of some medical needs and took care of schooling, that kind of thing. But every time we talked with, his name was Emmanuel, the interpreter was beside him, and he always wanted him to be on his right side. And so we got back home and we're like, that's kind of strange. He's not doing very well in school. He wanted the interpreter on the right side. So we got in touch with the organization and they said, well, we'll check it out. Well, it turns out that Emmanuel had an ear infection for 8 years. And if you're familiar with the history of Rwanda, there was a genocide where lots of kids were orphaned. He had lost his father. He knew that he wouldn't get any medical treatment, so he just kind of kept it quiet. Well, they asked us, would you want to pay for this operation? And, us being in the Western world, we're like, I have no idea. How much is that going to cost? $20,000, $30,000, $40,000? So he said, well, why don't you find out, and then we will let you know. So again, this magic has been a dual path for me. It has been in my professional life, do things nights and weekends, that type of thing. And so I was traveling to Washington, D.C. to do a show. And it was later, I would always call my wife on the way back and say, hey, I'm headed back. I should be there in a couple of hours. And she said, well, the organization called and they have given us the price for the operation. And so I'm like, trying not to swerve off of the road, and I'm holding my breath. And I said, well, how much is it? Well, she told me almost to the exact number, the amount of money that I'd just made doing something that I would have done for free, something that I loved. And so it was no question. We were going to pay for the operation. We actually found out later through some connections that his entire personality had changed. He became more outgoing. He did better in school. And so again, there was this transition point where I'm like, you know what? Mine is magic. I love performing. People have something that they're great at that they take for granted. And they need to know that's their personal abracadabra. And they need to give that to somebody else. And whatever that means, you may have people listening right now thinking back to that thumbprint on the page. What character would they have drawn? Is that something that they're passionate about? It doesn't have to be your profession. It could be something that you just give to somebody else. And so I think that was the trigger for me to want to pursue that, is to let people know that they're valued and there's something that they are awesome at, and they just need to embrace it and go for it. So again, a little bit longer answer, but that really is the impetus for me to move somebody from where they are to where they are, give them a different to live their life by.
That is such a powerful story. And I've written something down there, that personal abracadabra. I think that's a phenomenal phrase. I love it. And, when I think back to when I left the corporate world, I'd lived most of my life in a very siloed retail environment. It was B2C, I didn't even know what B2C or B2B meant. I served customers. That's how I thought of it. And I remember coming to do networking events with people, and I'd been told, you need to show value first and people will give you value back. And I was like, oh, brilliant. What's my value? I have no idea. I've worked in retail all my life. And I started off giving kind of leadership advice, which I'd done 15 years of different levels of leadership, and it was with lots of different people. I have something to say on all of that. And the moment of realization came to me down the line was that I love connecting people. I love it's a jigsaw puzzle, and I love finding somebody who needs the services of somebody else and putting them together. Not for me to make money, just to see the look on their face when they go, oh yes, you're the person I was supposed to meet. And it became, if you like, my personal abracadabra at the beginning was, how do I add value to people without having a real B2B skill set? Well, it was this connecting thing. So your story really, really resonates, and I'm pleased you shared it. To come back to where we started off at the beginning, a lot of your mission is based around getting rid of marketing fluff. Now, that's a very kind of subjective and quite a polarizing opinion, but I like it. But I'd love to hear from you, Jimmy. Like, what would you class as marketing fluff, and why does it cause you why does it frustrate you so much? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, and again, it is a subjective opinion as to what marketing fluff is, and I think it has, with the advent of ChatGPT, all the various AI tools, we hear that content is king or queen, or however you want to interpret that. There have been a number of, with algorithms, especially with Google, devaluing. We have the EAT framework, which is really focusing on expertise, authority, trustworthiness. And you just can't push the easy button and get something that's generic and put it on your site, because it's a reflection of you, right? And so, again, going back to putting the time in, providing something of value. If you're reading something about a company and it just doesn't say anything, it doesn't have any personality, it doesn't have a tone of voice, what am I actually learning from you? And it frustrates me because, again, we're all unique. We have skills, we have perspectives, we have points of view. And the more people know about those things that get you excited, because I believe enthusiasm is transferable. And if I'm enthusiastic about something, and you talk about mirroring people and body language and raising your voice and intonation, when you talk to somebody who's passionate about something, what happens? They talk faster, they smile, they get more energy involved. And that's what content should be. Content should not be, I have to do this because somebody in marketing says I have to do this. So I'm just going to go write some generic article or put some social media out there. And it just adds to the trash pile of content that is prevalent across the internet. And it's really an opportunity for businesses to be proud of who they are and what they do. And you will be a diamond in the rough if you actually talk real, if you have some personality and you have a point of view on something.
Special shout out in today's episode for our charity partners, ADHD Liberty, led by Sarah Templeton, who are part of the fight to prevent the school to prison pipeline for ADHD and neurodiverse individuals. If you'd like to find out more, you can visit them. The show links are in the notes below, and I would encourage you to go along and have a look and educate yourself on their fight. It's an incredibly important cause, and we're super proud to have them as charity partners for the Market Pulse Frozen Pioneers podcast. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your episode.
If you dare, right? If you dare.
If you dare, yeah. And I know that's your business, so I'm sure you come across that all the time.
Well, interestingly, I was having a conversation with a group in a networking group this morning, and one of them copied and pasted a paragraph from an email that she'd received from somebody. And to your point, not even marketing. It wasn't even marketing fluff. It was an internal comms. But it was like one long paragraph and it said absolutely nothing. My brain melted trying to decipher what it was that she'd actually said in this email. And so I don't think marketing fluff is specific to marketing. I think there's a lot of fluff out there. Part of me wondered whether somebody had put a prompt into ChatGPT to create the email in the first place. I don't think they had. I think that's, it was a non-expert trying to relay technical information about something they didn't really understand instead of just putting their hand up. And I think there's an element of that across marketing as well. As marketers, sometimes I'll come across people that do far more than they're expert at. Know your lane, stay in it. Be an expert at one thing or the two things that you're really, really good at. And I'm sure, working in paid media as well as anything else, you come across people in the same sort of industry that claim to be master of everything, all encompassing paid media wise and pay-per-click and SEO and organic and website design. And it's incredibly hard to be an expert in one of those things, never mind multiple, unless you've got a bigger team where you can have individual experts. Is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah, and that's why we have a team that pushes 200 employees, because we basically created, and we went through a reorganization about 1.5 years ago, where we divided up the company into 4 unique teams. And then we have specialist subject matter experts in each of those areas. We are full service, and we believe that, you don't go, and it's a cliche thing, you don't go to a general practitioner to have brain surgery done, right? You seek out the experts. And so we've really tried to build the agency with a team of experts and not generalists.
Perfect. I like the idea. I like it. Getting back to the magic script then, because that's obviously your baby, that's your marketing abracadabra, right? What is the magic script and what can we learn from it?
Sure. It's a messaging framework that can be used for any type of communication. As I started to work with a variety of clients and understand what their challenge is, again, I see the world through the lens of magic. And I thought about presenting a trick to an audience, and what is the structure of that trick. Now, I was fortunate enough to be included in a training program with a Broadway director. He was in the original cast of Annie. He's a magician himself. He's directed, 22 Broadway productions. And so we went to Montreal for about a week, about 10 of us, and actually went about 5 times to this event. And at how you connect with an audience, where is the trigger of intrigue, and then how do you satisfy that desire for somebody to see the conclusion of that trick. And so as I thought about that, I went, well, that's the exact same thing that needs to happen with any sort of messaging. And so we'll just talk about that from a commerce perspective. Nothing happens until you make a connection with somebody. So we've all heard about know, like, and trust. And so that's the first framework. And the connection point releases oxytocin in the brain, which are the neurotransmitters that can, communicate with the rest of the body. And that's that trust factor. And so whether it is some sort of rapport, common ground, you're identifying that you know their problem, that's the first thing. And then the next thing you want to do is you want to activate curiosity. And so when you activate curiosity, that's a release of dopamine. I know that we're all familiar with, people who are supposedly addicted to social media, and they talk about dopamine high. Well, it's not the addiction to social media, it's actually the expectation of a reward. And so when you post something, you're expecting that people are going to like it, love it. And so there's this chemical that is an anticipatory chemical, and it needs to be closed. And so we move from the connection to the curiosity, and then we need to move to the conversion, and that's the solution. The conversion is a release of serotonin, which is that feel good, everything's right with the world. And I started to look at that from a magic perspective. If a magician walks out on stage, he's going to greet the audience. He's going to win them over, right? Then he's going to say, he or she is going to say, I'm going to float this woman in the air. And so your brain is like going, how is that possible? Then the actual magic happens. And then you see the person floats up, floats down. That's release of the serotonin. And so if you can classify, every magic trick can be grouped into 13 different effects. So you start with the effect. And so it could be a production, making something appear. It could be a vanish. It could be a restoration. And so if you think about what your business is, if you have a product launch, that's a production, right? If you are in the roofing business or in the restoration business, then that's a natural form of restoring back something to its initial state. If you are in leadership and sales weren't great, are you restoring sales back to the way they were before? So you take one of those effects, that is the focus, that is the key purpose of what you're trying to communicate. And then there is particular phrasing that takes you from connection, curiosity, and conversion so that you are taking advantage of our natural tendencies to follow story pattern, to follow what we are wired to absorb through a connection, whether it be through an ad, through a speech, through a Zoom conversation that we're having. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. I've not been able to break it yet. And it's just a fascinating thing that I'm able to translate something that I'm very familiar with from the magic world and then apply that to commerce or any sort of connection or messaging framework.
There's one thing that I know that we both fundamentally agree on based on everything that you've said. And I'm interested to see your side of things. And It's a common question I get when I speak to new clients, which is, but can't I just go viral? And it's the most frustrating phrase in the world to me because one, if it was easy to do, there would be no such thing. And two, is it really what you want to do? What's your opinion of going viral versus more traditional awareness building?
Yeah, so I think the viral is that dopamine stage of the process. Everybody wants to be affirmed. They want to have a vanity metric. They want to be able to say in conversation that post went viral. I would much rather have a small group of rabid fans than a large group that gave you a standing ovation for 10 seconds and then vanished and never came back, especially if you are interested and you truly believe that your brand can solve a problem or provide a need for somebody. Why would you just want applause for applause sake? if something goes viral and it also connects with that audience, that's a different story. But typically what we see from a going viral perspective, it's a flash in the pan and there's no long-standing connection to the brand. So to chase a viral post is like chasing after the wind. So I don't know if that's your opinion. Sounds like it might be, but I would much rather go for the connection. Yeah.
There's no silver bullet. If things were easy, everyone would be rich because we'd all be honed in.
Oh, yeah.
We would all hone in on that thing that makes us all go viral and brings us money very, very easily, quicker than everybody else would do anything. It just doesn't exist. There might be tricks and hacks that you can use to help accelerate what it is that you're doing, but they usually require hard work and effort still. That's the bit that we're all a bit loath to give. And that's why I like talking to folks like yourself, Jimmy, because you're proof that hard work pays off, but it's got to be the right hard work. And it's got to be focused and intentional. And I think that's the thrust of what you're seeing, right? Is it's all great and well having your messaging out there, but you've got to have clear goals that you're trying to achieve with your messaging, and you've got to know how it works. And I think there's a lot of neuroscience tied in with what you're seeing as well, right? It's clear you've got an interest in neuroscience too.
Yeah, and I'm curious as to why people are fooled. So that plays into why I love magic. And it's called a script because there is a sequence to the way things happen. If you go see a production on stage, it's not a haphazard bunch of folks just saying what they want to say, right? There's a variety of sequences in what they say, the lighting cues, the scenery, and that makes it a wonderful production, and you connect with that production. Nothing against improv, but there's a reason why you don't go to Broadway or the West End of London to see an improv show, because it's not as scripted and not as, I hate to use the word formulaic, but when things work, they work, right? And so that show has been tested, it's brought out, things are changed to make it where it is. I, performed in a production at a theme park, and I had to do 365 shows over the course of 6 months. So that's 5 shows a day, 5 days a week. And each show, I focused on one thing to make better. And so by the end of that 6-month run, that was polished to perfection with a cast of 22 people. And, the show was much different on day one than it was on, 6 months later. And so when you look at your content and you look at your marketing, you have to be okay with being bad to start with. Video is one thing that a lot of businesses are trying to figure out, because 82% of traffic this year on the internet is going to be video related. You just have to be okay with being really bad at video, but you also have to have the discipline and the intent to get better. And then you will start to connect with the audience. If you follow a framework that has been proven to connect with your audience, you're going to have a much better chance than just winging it every time you get in front of the camera.
Absolutely. And that staying power, that consistency is huge in that. It's always darkest before the dawn. And I'm living through that this year. Absolutely been there and done everything that you're worried about. I've been there and made all the mistakes as well. So yeah, 100%. Thank you for that, Jimmy. If people want to kind of reach out and hear more from you, or they want to find out more about Thrive Agency, what's the best place for them to kind of get in touch with you?
Yeah, I am putting a lot of effort into LinkedIn. I'm producing a video every day, Monday through Friday. So practice what I preach, right? So I shouldn't have put that out there, because after I did the math, it's 261 videos this year. So maybe about 250, I'll sound okay. But yeah, LinkedIn, people can connect with me there. DM me if you want to jump on a call and chat. I'd be happy to talk through whatever the struggles are with your business. And then Thrive Agency is just how it sounds, thriveagency.com. Yeah, tell them Jimmy sent you. If you send us a message, we'll be happy to help think through how we can get you from where you are to where you want to be.
Amazing. Thank you very much for your time today, Jimmy. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul.
And thank you for watching along at home. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to make sure that you don't miss out for next week's episode. And if you haven't checked it out, there's one thing that Jimmy mentioned in the middle of the show, which was around know, like, and trust. Well, we had Bob Berg on the show last week. So if you want to go back and see that episode, Bob was the guy that popularized that book with his book, The Go Giver. Absolutely go back and give that a watch. If you've enjoyed this, you'll love Bob's episode also. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to feature on a future show, or you've got some ideas for folks who would make a great guest, please drop us a line. Contact details are in the show notes and I'd love to hear from you. Your host today was me, Paul Banks, founder at Javelin Content Management. Here at Javelin, we specialise in helping busy business owners just like you to repurpose video content, taking all the stress and tech problems away and turning your long form video into literally hundreds of pieces of content without breaking the bank. We describe it as getting ideas out of your head into video and out to your socials. If you want to launch your personal brand, become the vendor of choice for your audience, or maximise your sales revenue impact, we'd love to hear from you. Join us next Wednesday for the next episode, and don't forget to subscribe and give us a review. Our podcast is only possible with your continued support.